Welcome to this explainer. Today we are diving into a really incredible, absolutely vital intersection, the place where ancient Islamic theology meets modern clinical science. We're going to unpack the data, the history, and some profound textual evidence to not only validate the hidden mental health struggles so many of us face today, but more importantly, to lay out a holistic prophetic prescription for navigating them. So, if you're looking for a structured, evidence-based approach to your spiritual and psychological well-being, you are in exactly the right place. Let's get into it. Right off the bat, I want to say this. This explainer is for the struggling version of you. We aren't here to project some kind of perfect, flawless image today. If you're someone who wakes up at 3 a.m. with a chest just completely full of unexplained anxiety, or if you find yourself just kind of going through the motions of daily life while carrying this massive internal burden, I am speaking directly to you right now. The source material we're exploring makes a really powerful claim. Your struggle, it is absolutely not a sign of weak faith. Actually, it's a sign that you're human and that you're feeling the immense, crushing weight of the specific conditions the Prophet Muhammad described centuries ago. And you know what? You are far, far from alone in that struggle. 280 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. The World Health Organization reports that over 280 million people globally suffer from depression. And the data shows us that Muslim communities are experiencing these mental health crises at parallel and sometimes even higher rates compared to the general population. But the problem is, within these communities, there's often this incredibly unfair added burden of stigma. This toxic misconception that a psychological struggle is just a spiritual failing. Well, today we're going to completely dismantle that idea using the tradition's very own texts. To really understand how to navigate all this, we have to look at the historical reality. The Prophet himself didn't just magically float above grief and anxiety. Think about the year of sorrow in 619 CE. After losing his greatest supporters, his beloved wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, and after being literally physically attacked and rejected by the people of Taif, he made this exact dua. He sat there, bleeding, and offered this deeply, deeply vulnerable expression of human pain. He didn't pretend the pain wasn't there. He honestly expressed his suffering to Allah, which proves that acknowledging and naming your pain is actually the ultimate model of psychological health. And that vulnerability builds into a highly practical spiritual toolkit. You see, the Quran doesn't pretend human beings don't suffer. Instead, it sits with the pain, names it, and offers exact divine prescriptions. If you're feeling totally overwhelmed, Surah Al-Inshirah promises that ease is literally embedded right there with the hardship. If you're anxious, Surah Al-Baqarah assures us that no soul carries a burden beyond its capacity. For the despairing, Surah Yusuf gives a direct command: do not give up hope. And if you're brokenhearted, Surah Ar-Ra'd points to the remembrance of Allah for true, lasting rest. It's basically a perfectly structured emotional first aid kit. So how does that remembrance actually work in the brain? This is where the Islamic and neuroscience just perfectly align. We're talking about Dhikr. Research by Dr. Justin Thomas documents that the simple rhythmic phrases of Dhikr actually activate your parasympathetic nervous system. From a clinical perspective, this repetitious vocalization interrupts those awful cycles of anxious rumination and physically drops your cortisol levels, which, as you know, is the body's primary stress hormone. So it's not just a spiritual nice-to-have, it is a scientifically documented physiological intervention, a real game changer. But it's not just about what we say. It's about structured, daily physical interventions. Think about the 5 daily prayers. These serve as arguably the most sophisticated mental health rhythm ever designed. Fajr grounds you before the noise of the world intrudes. Dhuhr provides this vital midday interruption to your stress. Asr anchors you during that afternoon energy dip. Maghrib manages the psychological transition from public to private life. And finally, Isha closes the day with surrender. This whole structure is purposely designed to repeatedly interrupt the anxious mind's tendency to just spiral out of control. Now, here's a crucial point to wrap your head around. The mental health crisis we're seeing today, it isn't separate from the prophetic description of the end times. It's a direct consequence of it. We see prophecies of fitna like dark patches of night, completely mirroring today's epidemic of chronic anxiety disorders. Warnings of neighbors becoming strangers perfectly describe our modern loneliness epidemic. So what does this mean for us? It means you're living through exactly the conditions that produce chronic psychological threats. Understanding this should grant your hidden pain complete legitimacy. You're reacting normally to a wildly, overwhelmingly difficult era. And then you add in the sheer physical danger of modern isolation. Get this, in 2023, the US Surgeon General literally declared loneliness a public health epidemic. They noted a shocking statistic, that loneliness is more physically harmful than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We are living in this crazy paradox where we're infinitely connected digitally, but more profoundly isolated than ever before. The Prophet's ancient, targeted antidote to this deadly epidemic is simple, but it demands effort, real physical presence, spreading salam, maintaining family ties, and gathering shoulder to shoulder in the community. But hey, the mind doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Which means we absolutely cannot ignore our physical foundation. The great scholar Ibn al-Qayyim documented that physical health is the absolute bedrock of mental well-being. The Sunnah commands us to maintain our physical bodies. First, prioritize your sleep. Modern science totally confirms this is vital for emotional regulation. Second, eat mindfully, following the prophetic rule of filling the stomach in thirds. And third, you've got to move your body. A spiritually heavy soul simply cannot function properly in an exhausted, unmaintained physical instrument. It just doesn't work. Because of this physical reality, the tradition leaves us with a crystal clear command: make use of medical treatment. I want to be absolutely explicitly clear to anyone listening right now. Seeking professional clinical help from therapists, like Dr. Rania Awad at Stanford, for example, or taking prescribed psychiatric medication is not a sign of weak faith. Mental illnesses have biological and neurological components. Seeking treatment is the vital, active application of a very specific prophetic command to seek out the cures Allah has placed in this world. Prayer and professional treatment, you need both. Neither replaces the other. And that brings us to the ultimate anxiety cure, something no single therapy session can fully deliver on its own: Tawakkul. This is the active, conscious surrendering of outcomes to Allah, but only after doing absolutely everything in your power. It's that famous concept of tying your camel. You have to actively take the medication, make the dua, seek the therapy, and build those physical habits. But once you've done the work, you release the uncontrollable outcomes into the hands of the one who holds literally everything. It is the perfect antidote to the modern illusion that we're somehow in control of it all. Listen, if you are in crisis or struggling right now, please do not get overwhelmed by massive lists of obligations. We're going to keep it super simple. Just focus on these 5 immediate, low-barrier steps. 1. Make one honest dua right now, in whatever language you speak. 2. Text one trusted person just to break the isolation. 3. Do one physical thing. Drink a glass of water, take a walk, just to signal to your nervous system that you aren't frozen. 4. Recite Surah Al-Inshirah slowly to remind yourself of the promised ease. And 5. If you are in crisis, please call a medical support line, like Umang Pakistan or the Befrienders globally. Relief is a manageable process, just one small step at a time. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. The sources tell us that Allah tests those He profoundly loves, just like He tested the prophets and the greatest companions. So instead of seeing your pain as proof that you've been abandoned, ask yourself this: how might your current struggle be building the promised ease? Your struggle might just be building the exact incredible resilience your soul requires. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep seeking help, and remember, you are absolutely not alone in this.